Hello everybody, this is Simeonski. Welcome to another Rec Room tutorial. In this one, I'm gonna explain to you one of the mechanics that I used in my games and also show you how you can build this mechanic into your game step by step. Okay, today what we want to create is we want to go a little bit into PvP mechanics. This will probably be a 2 or 3 part video. I'm not sure yet where I will split it, but I want to take you into processes, how I create stuff a little bit here in this as well, because I did not create a PvP map myself yet. I'm just trying to figure out how the mechanics work, and we can do that together. So, to create a PvP map, we first need to create something that indicates that we hit a player or a player is hit. So for that, we need to get a player. Empty, that's different. Okay, doesn't matter. We need a player definition board. We start with that. This is basically something like a circuit thing that we can edit and where we can add an event. And this is basically inside this player definition board. There will be, can have an event receiver and then an event sender. This is basically connected to your player, and this has different settings than a normal event receiver outside the player definition board would have. For example, what we have here, what we want to use now for the PvP map, is the root object. No, it should be projectile hit player. You can even set different places there, but I for now don't want to do too much with it. I basically want to have the collision data, basically and it's called collision data. You can use that, collision, and that should be something that you can do with the collision data. Collision data get distance, get normal, collision data get object. But we want to use the collision data get player here. And just connect this to this. And then basically what we want to do is we send out the data from this collision firing player. We have a firing player. We might need that later for points and stuff. So we will see how this works. But to send it out, actually, we do need to do something outside this player definition board. And this is, we need to create an event for event definition. And we call this, to know what it does, player hit. Submit. And so now we can edit this player definition board. Oh, we need to, because we're sending out a player. So we need to add a player value. Player, call it player hit now, because We want to change something later in that process, but I want to go choosing where's the player here, player. But I want to go step by step so you can not to overwhelm you. So we basically sending out this event player hit to all, and then sending out the player that's been hit, collusion data get player, players hit, it's sent out. And now what we can do here in our outside of this is to receive the event. Here it is, player hit. And then check. So this will go out to everyone, and then we need to check if player is local. So this checks if the player that was hit is yourself. And if it is yourself, then we can do different things. For example, what we could do, we could, if we want to have a very simple PvP, so you hit the player once, player is spawned to a certain area. You could do that easily with a set position and get position and a vector. So that would be the easiest way. So we say we will want to transport whoever is hit into this area over there. So we connect to get position, set position. If it's local, then the player hit will be set to this position, and this already does it. I think it's not really doing it. We need a pistol. Okay, let's have a paint pistol here. What's that? Okay, let's have a paint pistol here. And now if I shoot myself, and you see that nothing is happening. Why nothing is happening? Because we need to do one more little step here, and this is to actually activate the player definition board. It will always be deactivated, even if you take it from an invention or something like that. This board is always deactivated by default. Want to activate it, and then if I hit myself now, I should be transported over there. Let's see. There we go. So this is the easiest start to do a PvP map. One hit, bam, transport to a certain area. You can also use that for moderation or something like that. But of course, we want to go more in depth with that. How do we go more in depth? So what I want to do now is that the next thing is that people need to be hit 5 times to actually respawn. So that's actually super easy. You can do that with integers. You just, before you do this, in between, you will put the integer. So that's how I normally work. I set up the basic mechanics, the simple mechanics, and then put the more advanced in between and just relocate everything. So this would be, we call it health. And then we basically, whenever the player is hit, whenever the player is hit, we add let's maybe do it in a way. We can add 1 health here, but what I would like to do, which is a little bit a better system because health is going down, not up, we can set the default value, I think here, to 5. So it's 5 by default now. And then instead of adding health when you are hit, we are subtracting health. Subtract. This is important for later things, when you want to show how much health you have and stuff like that. It's better to do it this way. So we are subtracting health, and then we do an if chip. If and then we do equal less or equal. You can also do just less. Yeah, maybe just we will just do less here. Yeah. Less than, okay. Less or equal is also fine. It doesn't matter much, but you just need to work with a little bit different numbers. So if your health is less or equal 1, so whenever it's 0 or below, which shouldn't happen, but it can happen, of course, if you are hit by 1,000 people at one time, then less than is a good value to do. Equal. You could also use the equal 0, but then it might be complicated if you're hit several times, so better use the less than 1. So if your health after setting your health is 0, then what we want to do is first we want to respawn. And of course you can add other things here, like for example, you could give the person a roll that you have to stop for a second and cannot move, something like this. But we want to keep it as simple as possible here now, and in a way that it still would work. So we set the position back to this area over there. And then, very important, we want to give the health back. So we will just use this, and after the position has been set, we will give back 5 health to the person that's been moved over there. Of course, then you can, people could spawn camp and things like that. So there's way more mechanics to that you have to consider, and that you have to find out what you do, like giving people a role that they cannot be hit, or having a zone where no projectiles can get in, and you have to, like, kind of a safe house or something like that. But this is the more complicated stuff, so it will get more complicated than this, but I want to keep it as simple as possible so you can start with something. So this should now work. If I hit myself 5 times, I will be teleported. 1, 2, 3, 5. And there we go. That's how you can build this mechanic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That's the simple way. And maybe one thing I want to add in this tutorial before we go to the more complex one is I want to add something that actually gives the person that kills you a point. So we have to go back to the not everyone that hits you, but the one that actually gets the final shot will get a point for killing you. And this is quite easy because we have this firing player thing here. So what's the difference between a reckoning object, firing player object here? Yes. That's why I called this one thing here player hit. We will add another one that's, we call it shooter. Player. Okay. There. Shooter, okay. And this will send out the shooter, and we can just, this is super simple, connect this. Firing player, connect the shooter, and then, yes, please. And then what we want to do is, after the person is killed, before it's teleported, we will add something else that gives the player that hit you a point. And for this, we need to send out an event again. Or can we do it with that event? Let's see. No, let's send out another event. It's possible to do it with just one event, but I want to do it with another event that's sent out, and that's that says kill. Just say kill. So, and we want to give that a property, which will be a integer, and it says kills. Okay. Oh no, that's not the right one, because we that was wrong. We just don't need that. Just need the player that's been hitting you, basically. Okay, that's a little bit drastic, but we want to just put an event sender here in between before the position is set, and call this event sender kill and target all. Important would be, and then you connect the shooter to this, and it will send out the name of the shooter. And we want to have our kill count in another event chain, event receiver. So I will go over here. If the event receiver, kill, then we check if so just to let you know if player is local, so we check if this is the local player, and And then if it is so, we will just have another thing that's called integer. And we will just add here. Add something to that. Not something, one. That. Call that one kills. Kills. And in order to see your kills as well, we will have the to a string here. So convert this value to a string and have a text box. So it's a very simple way, of course. That will, I guarantee you, you can build it like that, but there will come problems. People might spawn, people might hit too often. You might have, you have to build a lot of safety measures in here. It's just a very, very basic way it works. Text, let's go text. Okay, text, come on, text. We basically set the text to how many kills you have. Go. And this should be it. And it's local. This is only for you. Of course, don't forget, if you have more people, don't sync this. So this needs to be unsynced here. Good. And now, if I hit myself 5 times, it returns me. And since I am the hitter myself, you see now there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it tells me I have 2 kills. Yeah, that's basically it. Maybe one more thing. We will go to a more complex system in the next video, which will be adding a HUD. Probably will not be too long, but I will do another video for the HUD. One more important thing is, if you don't want people to just do what I do, hitting themselves on the hand and get kills for it, then you have to change one little thing here, and that is basically the event senders. This means event senders not target all, but target others. So this is basically, and you have to do this also in the player definition board here. I just used all now, otherwise I cannot show you how it works. Player, target player, but I don't know what this is, but target others, okay. And yes, please. And this means now if I hit myself, it shouldn't work anymore. Let's see. Yeah, doesn't do anything if I hit myself. I have to hit another player. Okay. Yeah. This is the first part. Second part will come. Thank you guys for watching. As always, like and subscribe the video if you liked it, or leave a comment. You can also leave comments on what you want to see more on this channel. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.